Welcome to the Commonwealth Policy Center's Candidate Forum. I'm your host, Richard Nelson, founder and executive director of the Commonwealth Policy Center. Kentucky's primary elections are on May the 21st, and there are several choices that voters will have on the ballot, including a primary for Senate District Number 5. The incumbent is Republican Senator Steve Meredith, and a Republican challenger is vying for that seat, and that is Thomas Ballinger. Thomas, welcome to the Commonwealth Policy Center Candidate Forum.
Thank you for having me, sir.
As I had shared off air, this is an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to the voters and tell them who you are, why you're running, and what you would do if you were elected. So running for office is not the thing that most people think of doing. They don't just get up one morning and say, I think I'm going to run for the state Senate. So let's start with that. What prompted you to want to run for Senate District Number 5?
Well, there was a few issues that come up. Number one was basically a lack of representation. I was had the honor of being chosen by the sportsman to be a commissioner in our district, and I could not get Mr. Meredith to do a resolution. His current response, or his response, was Senate leadership wants to hold off, or I'm going to have this senator do it. And I told him, we vote for you, you do us. You don't do what Senate leadership. So that was a constant what I was getting as Senate leadership. The second thing was it was looking at 241, which was passed last year, the 5-acre law, and how he tried to hide behind it. The 5-acre amendment was in there from the very beginning, and he still doesn't admit it. And he's been exposed on it, but it's just lack of representation for the voters of the district.
So we'll get into the 5-acre law in just a minute. We'll unpack that a bit, but tell the voters a little bit about you, where you're from, your family, brief background. I learned that you love hunting and fishing, but tell us a little bit more about your background.
My background is I am former military. I'm a disabled veteran. I am a past president of Kentucky Beekeepers Association. I've served on the board of directors for Heartland Agricultural Society, Eastern Agricultural Society, and been fortunate enough to speak at the International Pollinator Conference. I worked directly with the Department of Agriculture. My family, my wife is a former teacher. I have one daughter that's a graphic designer, and I have one daughter that she attended the Gatton Academy. She graduated UK, won the Alltech Global Young Scientist Award, and now she has a PhD. And she's under 30. Okay. So education in my family is a big thing. You have to get your kids educated to a certain extent to survive in this changing world.
Okay. So education is important to you, and you must be proud as a dad and to see your daughters accomplished in their respective fields.
Yes, I am.
You mentioned that you enjoy... Yeah, go ahead. You enjoy hunting and fishing, the outdoors.
Yes, I enjoy hunting.
Let's talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
I enjoy hunting.
So, what kind of?
The biggest thing that we try to do with our hunting operation, or how we hunt at the house, is we take a lot of kids. There's a lot of kids that don't have the opportunity to be able to go hunt somewhere and hunt. Like I told you off air, I think I've got 9 kids slated for this next turkey season, which is coming up. And I will stop campaigning to take them kids. The kids are your future. If you don't educate your kids and expose them to different environments, you're putting them in a bottle. You don't want to put your kids in a bottle.
Yeah. Very good. What a great thing you're doing, too. A lot of our young kids don't have role models, and many are plugged into digital devices, and they get a chance to get outdoors and experience hunting or fishing opportunities. So I commend you for doing that, Thomas. If we could you tell us, tell the voters and those tuned in as to some of the things and people who've shaped you in your political thinking, whether it's a a political figure in U.S. history or Kentucky history or current leaders, or maybe church. I don't know how your church has shaped you, or maybe some pastors have shaped you, but what has formed your political thought, if you will?
My political thought's a little bit different than most people, just because due to the fact I went into the military at such a young age. I went in basic training between my junior and senior year of high school. And I learned at a young age in the military, you had to go. It didn't matter if your commander in chief was a Republican or a Democrat. You did your job. You couldn't debate it, anything like that. But I was very fortunate during my career that I worked for a couple of one-star generals and a three-star general and several lieutenant colonels that they basically explained a lot of the issues and how you looked at different situations. So I look at everything with an open mind, but you also have to have morals and you have to have values. And taking of a life is not something that you have to take easily. And that's just a part of the military. You're gonna be in that situation sooner or later. But I've been very fortunate to be molded and groomed by some of the best officers and non-commissioned officers. I was part of a unit that had the youngest command sergeant major in the Army, and he was very smart, very intelligent, and he instilled a lot of the leadership values that I have now.
Okay, very good. According to, it's either your website or social media page, it says that you are pro-Second Amendment. How important is the right to keep and bear arms to you and your campaign?
It is very important. That comes up at every place that I talk. There are guns. That's what we use to protect ourselves. That's what we use to feed our families. And guns don't kill people. People kill people. Too many people turn that around and saying it's the gun's fault. It's not the gun's fault. It's the idiot pulling the trigger. And leave my guns alone. Point blank. I will stand for none of it. I will be the first one in line to fight over guns.
Very good. Now, there's a bill in the Kentucky legislature. It's the CARR Act, C-A-R-R, I believe it is. And often, Thomas, we have legislation proposed after there's some kind of a mass shooting. I think this one was in response to that mass shooting in Louisville at the bank. There was a young, troubled individual, I think mentally ill individual, who came in and just started blazing away and shot several people before he was killed. What would be the solution? So you're pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment. How do you address mass violence or a mass shooting? What would be your response? Let's say you're in the legislature and God forbid that we have another mass shooting. It doesn't seem like they're going to stop anytime soon. But what would be your response when there's a mass shooting, or how do we address that as a matter of public policy?
As a matter, how I would address it is you look at it, okay, did he have physical or did he have mental signs at home? Because that's parents' responsibility if he's a minor. That's parents' responsibility to see if he has mental. And then that would fall back. A lot of these would fall back to the parent if it's a minor. If it's an adult and somebody had seen that, there is repercussions for what you do. And right now, there's not a lot of repercussions for a lot of people that don't report, don't notify somebody. Hey, this guy's got a problem. Let's look at it.
So would you be in favor of a law? So you're saying that parents or friends should take note if there's somebody that's mentally ill. Should they report that to the authorities? Let's say if they have access to guns, should they report that to the authorities? Or what would be...
It doesn't have to be mental ill. That mental illness is a diagnosis. I know several people with PTSD, but they are very responsible gun owners. Somebody that's showing signs, or showing signs of wanting to do some danger to somebody else. Their friends knew about it. His social media knew about it. You need to report that. Stand up, be a citizen, and report it.
So, Thomas, would you be in favor of a red flag law that would mandate that if somebody is acting in a manner that's not responsible, where they could harm themselves or others, would you be in favor of a law that would require reporting of a person like that to the authorities?
Report it to the authorities, but it needs to go through a judge. Lack of representation.
Okay.
No gun. No, you're not touching my guns without representation. You know,
Okay.
you would, what if you don't say representation? Then you run into the deal. If an officer pulls you over that has no psychological training, and he says you look like you're distressed, then they can pull your gun. Wrong answer. It needs to go through the legal system.
Okay. Very good. Related to guns is sportsman's rights. That's another thing you have listed on your website.
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about sportsman's rights. What do you mean when you use that term, sportsman's rights?
Right now in the Senate has ignored the sportsmen for 3 years now for appointing new commissioners. The sportsmen have to meet at a certain time to appoint those. It's not a 24-hour election window. It's a 1-hour block that you have to be there before that time because they close the doors. And then you're voted on. A list of 5 people is brought to the governor. The governor makes a choice and then goes to the Senate. The Senate hasn't confirmed anybody. The Senate is ignoring the sportsmen's choices for those positions. The Game and Fish is a self-sustained entity. And without the voice of those sportsmen, it'll turn into a commercial entity. And a commercial entity is not looking out for conservation, is not looking out for the sportsmen, is not looking out for our future generations.
So what you're referring to is the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. They have a governing board. There are people from districts across the state. I can't remember exactly how. Is it 7, 8,
No.
something like that? There's 9. Thank you. In each of those 9 members represent a region. They are they're eventually appointed by the governor, but they need to be confirmed by the state Senate. And what you're suggesting is that the state Senate hasn't made any confirmation to that. It seems to me, and I don't know the details, but it seems to me some kind of a power struggle between the state Senate and the governor's office. Is that a fair assessment?
It is a fair assessment. Like with me, I was chosen by the governor. I was in California when I was chosen. Never met the governor. Did a phone interview and was chosen. I was at my daughter's graduation in California for her PhD. Never met the governor. And the Senate says, you know, you're a plant. You know, they're not using, they're using Senate Bill 64 as a weapon against the sportsmen because they're not confirming. You have to be confirmed. And then to be slick about it, if you're not confirmed, they come in with a KRS 350160, and it says if you're not confirmed, you're not eligible for another 2 years. Well, on a 4-year appointment, it's basically 4 years before you're ever eligible again. So if you don't have a resolution, if you have a problem with one of them candidates, do a resolution, bring them to a committee, ask them. That's what the process is for. Ask them. Ask them the hard questions. I can defend myself. I'm a very capable man. Ask me the hard questions. I do not care. But they refuse to do that. They completely refuse to do that on a lot of people. And they're just ignoring the sports rights. Give you, for instance, Senate Bill 3. It had numerous people talking committee against it. Numerous. Several organizations, SCI Kentucky, League of Kentucky Sportsmen, a lot of organizations spoke against it, and they still passed it.
Let's talk about that. Senate Bill or House Bill 3? House Bill 3?
Senate Bill.
Senate Bill 3. Tell us what that was.
Senate Bill 3 wanted to put game and fish in with the department, underneath the Department of Agriculture. Well, the problem of it is Senate Bill, in the past, you had Senate Bill 217 and Senate Bill 241 that set up game and fish as a separate entity. And apparently that separate entity cannot operate by itself. They need help. Well, we had problems with 241. Number one, the 5-acre law. Number two is Game and Fish is a self-sustained entity. That's what they've been saying the whole time. And they are. They raise their own money. 241 gives Department of Game and Fish $3.8 million out of the general fund. If they're a self-sustained entity, then why are you giving them $3.8 million? There's so much double standard when it comes to the Game and Fish that somebody needs to stand up. And there's several people, because I get several calls from senators that's just waiting for numbers to stand up. But Game and Fish is being protected very well.
Kentucky is at a crossroads. We can choose to give in to the radical left, or we can choose to engage the culture in a God-honoring way.
I started the Commonwealth Policy Center because I believe that Christians have a responsibility to influence government and society to the glory of God. While the Commonwealth Policy Center's made a significant impact, our work isn't finished. If you'd like to join our movement working for timeless values, then head to our website.
To learn more, go to CommonwealthPolicyCenter.org.
Okay. If you're just tuned in, you are watching the Commonwealth Matters Candidate Forum. I'm Richard Nelson here with Thomas Ballinger. He is the Republican candidate in the Republican primary for the 5th Senate District in Kentucky. And Thomas, moving on to some other issues here, you list on your website school choice is an important issue. Are you in favor of that amendment to the state constitution that will allow for the possibility of school choice in the Commonwealth?
I am for two reasons. Number one, as a part of the Kentucky Beekeepers Association, I hit 81 schools last year. So I get to see a lot of private schools, a lot of home schools, Christian academies, public schools. And the public schools have got lax with a lot of their education standards because you can talk to the kids and tell in the same age group, tell which ones are not, I don't want to say smarter, but which ones think outside the box. And the public schools just take it for granted. We're going to get this money, we'll do it what we can. So you've got some districts that their Board of Education, for instance, has got more people than some of their schools. They're used to getting that money. Competition breeds excellence. And a efficient school can be a lot better if they think they're going to lose their money.
Okay, very good.
I think that'll help the public.
Okay, very good. A big issue in the legislature right now is DEI. That stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Critics say that this ends up in favoring certain races or ethnicities at the expense of others. In particular, it's the equity part, which would lead to equality of outcomes after the law or the program is applied. There's a bill that would stop DEI programs in higher ed, that's Kentucky colleges and universities. Is that something that you favor, an end to DEI?
Yeah. I deal with a lot of private organizations, and with they say you get DEI and you get people coming out of school and they expect to get the job. The only criteria you've got to get the job is you need to be the most qualified for that position. Okay. And that's not what they're being told.
I see. Okay. Another issue that has come up in the last couple of sessions is gambling expansion. A few years ago, HHR, or historical horse racing, was legalized at Kentucky's racetracks. Last session, there was the expansion of sports gambling, where there's a framework created in the Kentucky Lottery Corp to allow for sports books to come into Kentucky and for people to gamble. Where do you stand on gambling expansion?
I think it needs to stay where it's at. I'm not a big proponent of gambling. I work hard for what I got, and I just don't want to give it to somebody. But you see a lot of people that put a lot of money that they don't have into gambling. I'm just I'm just not for that. And that's my heart speaking. I haven't looked at the numbers. I don't know what the revenue is, but it needs to be looked at it from a income standpoint for the state and for a social issue, because you got to think we're coming out of COVID, and a lot of the younger generation lost a year and a half or so of social ability. So you'll see a lot of younger groups in the gambling institution.
Yeah. We've seen since sports gambling was legalized last, I think, September, it went into effect. A news story came out, I think, in January that showed that calls to Kentucky's gambling hotline have tripled. And that's just within a few, I think, maybe 4 months. Do you think that the legislature should look more closely at the social costs of gambling expansion?
Yeah. Dealing with a lot of the younger generation, losing that year and a half of social interaction, I've seen that coming before you. I didn't even know about that number. I wish you that number in here. But it's going to be a problem if we don't get a hold of it now. I don't think they need to expand it. That's just my opinion.
Okay, very good. Kentucky is now a pro-life state. It's one of 14 states that do not have any abortion clinics that are operating. This was an important issue to the Republican majorities in the House and Senate. I don't foresee any laws that would, or proposals to restrict it further. But how do you identify as far as being pro-life? Do you consider yourself pro-life, Thomas?
Yes. When it comes to a infant or unborn fetus, I guess what you would say, I love my kids. I love kids, period. You know, I mean, that's your future. The only exception I can deal with is life of the mother. And I know there's several people that want to bring in rape or incest. I would consider that, because there are some very bad situations that aren't the person's fault. But as I stand right now, life of the mother is the only thing that I would vote for on the pro-life side.
Okay.
Flip of the coin there, pro-life. I'm for the death penalty. If you do such a heinous crime and you murder, kill, destroy somebody else's life, and the judicial system has sentenced you to death, I am all for it. I will be there, because that's taking a life right there. You took a life. It's just not that's the flip side of my pro-life right there. I am for the death penalty. If you don't make them pay for their crimes, they're going to do the crimes and sit in jail, and you're going to pay for them for the rest of their life.
Okay. Very good. 2 sessions ago, Thomas, there was a bill that kept biological boys off of girls' sports teams. Would you have favored that?
A boy's a boy and a girl's a girl. Boy sports, girl sports. There is no in between there.
So you'd have favored if it kept the boys off of girls' sports teams. You'd have favored that bill.
Yeah, it's not the young men they're not supposed to be on girls' teams, and girls aren't supposed to be on boys' teams. It's wrong.
I understand. A similar bill, a related bill, was Senate Bill 150. It went through the legislature last year. It stopped the teaching of gender ideology in K through 12 schools. It kept boys out of the girls' bathrooms. It also stopped hormone therapy and puberty blockers and gender mutilation of minors. The idea behind the law is that minor children really cannot fully appreciate what is being done if they try to transition to look like the other sex. How would you have voted on Senate Bill 150?
I think it went exactly. You don't. They're growing. Don't try to put them what you think they are. They don't know what they are. The boy's a boy, a girl's a girl, and switching over like that. And I understand it's less than 1% of a person would have both genomes, but you're talking down to the micro level. These are people that are there. Well, I want a girl instead of a boy. That's just wrong. It's wrong on too many levels.
Very good. A bill in the Kentucky legislature right now would restrict minors from accessing online pornography. Right now, there are 9 states that require age verification to access online pornography. Of course, it's very accessible. There's all kinds of online porn websites, and there's a move to require age verification for online porn. It's a big issue. A lot of kids are exposed to it regularly, and it negatively impacts them. Where would you come down on that bill, the age verification before somebody could access online porn?
I'm all for it. I think it needs to be one of the other House reps that explain that to me and show me, all they got to do is put their date in there. I really think we need to figure out a more restrictive way other than just putting your birth date in there, because that is corrupting our children at a young age.
A similar bill, Thomas, would have restricted social media use of kids under 16. Now, that bill is on hold. They're going to do some more research and review it during the interim session. But that is an effort there is an effort there to keep kids, to protect them from social media use. Many kids get bullied. They get harassed. That's a place where child predators are, by the way. They're lurking out there trying to find kids to befriend and to lure them into illicit relationships. Do you think that there should be limits on kids accessing social media?
I really do. I think the social media it's very useful to some extent, but it's so detrimental to our kids looking for friends or looking for attention or just looking for some type of mind stimulation. You can go to a basketball game and watch, and half the kids sitting there are looking at their phone instead of watching a basketball game. It is the social media part is taking over our younger generation, and we need to figure out how to get a hold of it. I know some schools that have cell phone jammers. Some schools have actually started in some other states. When a child walks into school, their phone goes in a slot. And we've got a couple of private schools that are that way in the state. And I have been in them, and you can literally hear. You go into a school that kids are on the phone, you don't hear a whole lot of anything. Little chatter. You go into a school that the kids' phones are in their pockets or in a backpack, the kids are talking, the kids are interacting, the kids are laughing. It need to get them back to square one. And social media is controlling them.
And you may have a chance to address that if you do get elected to the 5th Senate seat. Thomas, we are just about out of time. Do you have any last words for the voters before they go to the polls on May the 21st?
My name is Thomas Ballinger. I also stand up for veterans' rights. I am the first one that'll be in line when it comes to veterans' rights. There was a bill that just got voted down, a House Bill 274, that should not have got voted down. Veterans are being taken advantage of. I humbly ask for your vote. You can go to my webpage at voteballinger.com or Thomas Ballinger for State Senate. I really appreciate your vote.
All right, Thomas Ballinger, thank you for joining us here on the Commonwealth Policy Center Candidate Forum. And thank you all for tuning in. For more information about the candidates or the Commonwealth Policy Center, go to our website, commonwealthpolicycenter.org.